I'm going to move over to the next topic there about Bank of America. You see this consent order. We've given you a link. Let me just give you the quick summary here. Hundreds of Bank of America loan officers reported that 100% of their applicants chose not to provide their demographic information over a 3-month period. And that goes on. In fact, these loan officers were not asking applicants for demographic data, but instead were falsely reporting that the applicants chose not to report the information. And it goes on to talk about their whole system of, allowing that to occur, et cetera. So, it's tough. It is really tough to ask for demographic information over the phone. But if you're taking phone applications, there's a requirement that you read them that disclaimer, that you give them the options. And I think it really leads to, we don't take phone apps in large part because it's tough, but that's more of my opinion. Here's what crystal ball I think here is, because this came out, every examiner in the world's reading that and is now going to start looking for that as well. And that's something we see over and over again. So make sure that you're using this as an opportunity to train your loan officers that they have to be asking the questions. They have to be trying to collect. We're not turning a blind eye to this. And don't let you be the next person that gets some kind of civil money penalty for that. So anyway, there's a little bit more in that link if you want to read through it, but that's the biggest deal, is just the not collecting and falsifying, if you will. So, all right.
Well, I think to chime in on that before we turn the page, you've been 30 plus years teaching and preaching this. And I think sometimes that, oh no, they're never going to look at that. I mean, who's going to look at that statistical analysis? Well, here we got one of the biggest banks in the land that they got called out for it, and that stuff trickles down.
Yeah. In fact, it's pretty tough to prove a negative, right? And this is, to me, kind of an interesting enforcement action, because it's a negative. How do you prove that they did that? And it's probably some interviews, I would assume. First off, there's a red flag. We're not saying anybody, come on, 100% of your applicants. Now, when I was an examiner, though, you couldn't make assumptions. They were very careful to say, listen, don't cite a bank for assumptions, even though it may be 100% assumption true. You're very sure. You got to be able to prove it. How do you prove this? And I would assume there was probably some, interviewing. And I think, in fact, I read through parts of it. There was even some emails and some notes and things like that became the rope that hung them with, if you will. Right.
Yeah. And I think I want two other things. I'm going to connect this to where I'm going to go next here. I don't want to forget that. But many of you have heard some information here where we've talked about 1071, maybe even the demographic side of that, or you're part of one of our working group on that, or maybe you've sat in one of our webinars. But the point is that there's now going to be another regulation with a similar requirement. And in that regulation, they have built in that you have to monitor for this kind of stuff. HMDA doesn't have that built-in monitoring system. You just kind of need to be doing it. Now we've got a regulation that's going to say, no, you need to have known this. If this happens on your watch, we told you needed to be on watch, and if you weren't, you're going to be in trouble. And I think that's an interesting concept. So
does that move to the overseers are being held accountable for those on the front line that are not doing this, you're saying, in 1071?
Well, it's got that 1071 has that that metrics built in, baked into the regulation, if you will, where, a lot of older regulations, we have to demonstrate compliance, right? And the proof is in the outcome. Well, this is, if the outcome isn't what we expect, very subjective, by the way, we can use the fact that we told you need to be looking for things, see right there in the regulation, and your procedures aren't up to snuff.
Yeah. Very subjective, right?
Yeah, very interesting.
That's a subjective thing that it'll be interesting to see how they do that. So anyway, use these, enforcement actions in general, use them as an opportunity to train your people, not to threaten them. Don't say we're all going to jail, we're all going to die, that kind of thing. But hey, here's somebody got hit pretty big. Could we be doing the same thing? Let's make sure we're not. And again, I think it brings up an issue with every field examiner reads that becomes low-hanging fruit for them to hit you with the same type of thing. So